The convent bells rang for the final time just before dawn. High in the hills of Thessaly, where olive trees bent under the weight of an early autumn wind, a small community of nuns gathered inside a crumbling stone chapel. The frescoes above them were cracked and faded, saints reduced to hollow outlines, their faces scraped away by centuries of weather, candle smoke, and neglect. The walls had heard prayers for generations. Now they listened to fear. On the distant horizon, fire shimmered. Ottoman banners had appeared along the ridgelines, red cloth catching the light like sparks against the mountains. No riders came from nearby towns. No soldiers remained to defend the valley. The sisters understood immediately what the silence meant. The frontier had collapsed. They were alone. At the altar stood their abbess, Sister Eleni of Lissa. She held a silver crucifix darkened by age, an object that had survived storms, plunder, and time itself. Her voice was steady, though her hands trembled slightly as she spoke. "If they breach the walls," she said, "keep your vows in your hearts. What is kept there cannot be taken." She was wrong. When the Ottoman army reached the convent gates, vows, prayers, and sanctity offered no protection. History had no mercy for symbols that refused to vanish. The first stones fell before sundown. Cannon fire shattered the outer walls, iron crashing through centuries of quiet devotion. The hymns that once filled those halls were drowned beneath smoke and screams. To the attackers, this was not holy ground. It was defiance made of stone, proof that the cross still dared to stand where the empire demanded submission. Inside, the sisters hid what they could. Silver chalices were buried beneath loose tiles. Embroidered icons were wrapped in linen and pressed into cracks beneath the floor. Fragments of saintly relics disappeared into the earth. They believed that if their bodies were lost, perhaps their faith might endure. The soldiers were not searching for treasure. They wanted evidence. Evidence that not only resistance but belief itself had been crushed. By nightfall, the surviving nuns were driven into the courtyard. Torchlight turned their white habits into shifting gold and shadow. They were told they would be taken before the Pasha, a promise few captives ever lived to see fulfilled. What followed was rarely written down. By dawn, the convent was ash. Smoke drifted from the refectory where the women had once shared bread and silence. Ottoman flags flew from the bell tower, signaling that resistance in the valley was over. But in the ruined courtyard, something unexpected happened. Instead of screams, the soldiers heard singing. Bound with rope, the remaining sisters began to chant. Not a hymn of despair, but one of defiance. The Agnus Dei, Lamb of God, who takes away the sins of the world. Their voices trembled, but they did not break. The Ottoman captain hesitated, unsure whether to laugh or silence them. He ordered the abbess brought forward. Sister Eleni still clutched the silver crucifix pulled from the altar ruins. He offered her mercy, renounce her faith, accept the conqueror's God. Her sisters would live. Her answer sealed her fate. "I have already given my life," she said. "What else can you take?" The captain turned away. What followed was never described in full. Even Ottoman records, which glorified victory, mentioned only discipline for those who refused reason. Yet in later European letters her name reappeared. Eleni of Lissa, the nun who would not kneel. By midday, the bells were melted down for coin. The rooftop cross was shipped east as a trophy. And rumors began to spread through nearby villages. They said that when the wind passed through the ruins at night, one could still hear women's voices. Not crying, praying. The march began before the smoke had cleared. 22 women, their habits torn and feet bleeding, were driven south toward the coast. They were not prisoners of war. They were symbols, proof that even sacred walls could fall. The journey was merciless. The sun scorched the road. Thirst hollowed their faces. When one sister fell, another lifted her veil so soldiers would not trample it. Small acts of dignity in a world stripped of mercy. Their abbess was gone, but her words endured. If you cannot hold the cross, hold each other. After 7 days, they reached the port of Volos. Ottoman galleys waited there, ships designed not for comfort but for control. The women were chained to wooden benches once used by criminals and slaves. As the sails caught the wind, the shores of Greece faded into the horizon, along with everything they had ever known. The overseer, Yusuf Aga, kept meticulous records. Cargo, spices, coin, textiles, and religious captives. It was this very ledger, discovered centuries later in Istanbul's archives, that confirmed a story once dismissed as legend. The voyage to Constantinople lasted 12 days. Storms lashed the deck. Salt burned open wounds. Hunger hollowed their bodies. But what broke them most was silence. No one spoke to them except to give orders. They existed like ghosts suspended between sea and sky. At night, the youngest among them, Sister Magdalena, whispered psalms under her breath. Her voice was barely audible over the waves. Yet chained prisoners nearby, Greeks, Slavs, Italians, turned their heads to listen. For brief moments, the sea itself seemed to still. When the ship entered the Bosphorus, the sisters saw Constantinople rise before them. Domes and minarets glowed in the dawn like blades. The city of the world's desire. Now their cage. They were marched through crowded streets where merchants paused and slaves stared. Christian nuns among captives were rare. Beneath the shadow of Hagia Sophia, they were forced to kneel as the call to prayer echoed above them. "We are home," one sister whispered, "but it no longer belongs to us." Before dawn, they were taken into the imperial council chambers. Names were recorded, ages noted, intended uses decided. Conversion was offered as mercy, refusal as discipline. None spoke. An elder, Sister Daries, finally stepped forward. "You may rename us," she said calmly, "but you cannot rewrite the prayers we carry." The interpreter hesitated. The Grand Vizier did not. "Prayers fade," he replied. "When the tongue forgets how to speak them." They were sent below Topkapi Palace, not to execution, but to something slower. Servitude. Underground chambers sealed from sunlight. Labor meant to erase identity. Floors scrubbed, fires fed, garments sewn for others who would never know their names. The empire believed time and hunger would bend them. It did not. At night they prayed in whispers. Crosses were carved into clay walls with fingernails. Verses traced into dust beneath straw beds. Days were counted by the rhythm of the call to prayer, not as surrender, but as defiance. Whispers spread among servants. Silent women beneath the palace. Some called them cursed, others saints. When persuasion failed, hunger returned. Darkness deepened. One by one, sisters were taken and never returned. By spring, only 11 remained. Beneath the palace foundations, they discovered a sealed archway. A hiding place turned chapel. Broken pottery became candle holders. Linen scraps became an altar. From a shard of mirror, they fashioned a cross. Here, they shared memories instead of sermons. Bread at dawn. Bells in the hills. Warmth before war. These memories became their psalms. Centuries later, archaeologists would uncover that chamber. Crosses scratched into stone. A Latin phrase half erased by time. The light shines in the darkness. Records erased them. Ledgers left blank. Names withheld. But silence became proof. Because only something feared is hidden so carefully. Their bodies vanished. Their faith did not. If you've heard their story tonight, let it stay with you. Some truths survive not because they were shouted, but because they were whispered, carved quietly into stone where no empire could reach. And in that silence they still speak.